in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What was behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Yo. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I hope I'm coming in loud and clear. Welcome to another episode of Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. We got a special guest today, including those of you in the chat, those of you in the building right now. Click that like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, all that good stuff. Because we're going to be talking about functional masculinity. We're going to be talking about, well, what exactly is the function of masculinity? Is there a lack of the skills that are required to perform said function in such and such a community? Okay, and is there hope, or maybe not? So that's what we're talking about today. We got Kaizo in the building. How's it going, Dr. Thunder?
It's all right, man. How you doing?
Oh, 100%. So there's no real planned schematic for this show. I decided to do something a little different here. But how about we set up a little bit what exactly one may consider to be functional masculinity? One could start by talking about the function, so one could start by talking about skills, right? So first of all, Dr. Thunder, then Kaizo, right? What is this functional masculinity thing, and what is the purpose of tackling this kind of a question, sir?
Yeah, so masculinity, functional masculinity. So that would be about what men do, the services that men provide in society. If you body snatch all of the men, what won't exist anymore in humankind? So, and this is outside of obviously stuff like baby juice. It's outside of our ability to provide half of what creates life. This is about what what services we actually provide to the community, to children, to the family structure. Stuff like the ability to provide and protect. Functional masculinity, right? The stuff that we do, right? Men are not valued for, who we are. We're valued for what we are. So, if you're not providing any value, if you're not providing anything of substance, then you are replaceable. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But unfortunately, that is the reality.
Okay. I like how you start us off here. You say, okay, masculinity is that thing, the function of masculinity is that thing that will be missing if you got rid of all men, right? And that makes it simple. So we don't have to talk about the distribution of masculinity and femininity. We just say, hey, if you got rid of all men, there'll be certain things that will be missing, such as this ability to protect and provide. You say it's about what you become. In other words, it's a skill thing, a development thing. It's not what you are, but it's something that you become. And this protection and provision thing, I may add one thing here, and then I'll go over to you, Kaizo. The protection and provision thing, I think in the last our last conversation was case closed on Sunday on Dr. Thunder's channel. Go check that out because we were talking about the decline in masculinity in that conversation. And I mentioned stoic acceptance of responsibility in that have to do with the control of the outside world. In other words, having to do with the dealing of nature. Okay, that's rather abstract, but so far what you've said hasn't shaken my hypothesis. So let's go to Kaizo, right? Functional masculinity. What are the functions? What are the skills? What is required? Is it missing? You can take it from anywhere you wish, sir.
Well, I wanted to ask a question, or rather clarify. Are we talking about functional masculinity in terms of the individual or the collective?
Yeah. The thing is, when we get to the level of the skills, which we're going to inevitably get to, then we're going to start finding out individual versus collective use. And when I say stoic bearing of responsibility, and then I got you. Stoic bearing of responsibility is more on the individual side, right? And then the controlling of the external environment, to what end? For the group purposes, perhaps, right? So you pick, but we're going to need inevitably to cover both.
Okay, so if you're talking about like from the individual perspective, right? Functional masculinity again is being stoic, understanding your role in this world, being able to manipulate that understanding, and also then using it for your leverage, meaning you're able to utilize it across time for your own and maybe immediate surrounding family, friends, business partners to be able to rule this world. Because ultimately, you are now in a contract between yourself and the environment, and you're trying to obviously tame it, a bit like a farmer, right? But if it's talking about functional masculinity at a community level, well, now this is talking about how can you be a man? What is a man, right? How is that understood with your neighbor? How does your neighbor understand what that means? And what are the transferable skills that can be obviously perceived within that whole community? So the two obviously converge, but there is a point of difference, because one hand, you could be a functional masculinity and be a passport bro, right? Take it, leave it, go somewhere else, succeed somewhere else, or you could try to fix your community where you are, and that's now for collectivistic.
What do you think about what MOT said about MOT didn't directly address it, but he said something which is kind of tangential. He said anyone that that thinks that family is made up of an unproductive man and an unfeminine woman. So you talk about fixing the community. Well, what do you have to say about this comment? Just MOT's comment in general.
So he says, I would say anyone believing in the black family consisting of unproductive man and the unfeminine woman, as well as it's basically finished, right? So I think in general, I do agree with that, right? If you take two broken, unproductive people and then you make them try to do something, guess what? In physics, we have something called constructive interference. Now, this is going to be destructive interference. The two things, when you put them together, will be destructive. So that makes perfect sense. Both parties, and again, not one party, because that's now the issue with the self-improvement people. They will tell you to improve yourself, but the issue is the more you improve yourself, the more lonely it is at the top.
Who's lagging here? Who's lagging behind here? Black men or black women? In other words, if we use MOT's terms, we have a proliferation, overabundance, overflow, too much of unfeminine women, so to speak, or is it a question of unproductive men? Who's not pulling the weight here? Because I see all kinds of things on the internet.
I don't know. Yeah, both sides have productive people, and both sides are now attracted to those people who are available. And obviously, there is a reigning zeitgeist.
Okay, sure, both sides. Dr. Thunder, who's who are we pinning it on? Okay, who's the weakest link? Let's get it.
Yeah, it's challenging because my tendency is to point at the men and to say, okay, what can you do differently? Where did you fail? And as I've said before, Adam was the first simp. So if I start from that perspective, and so it's been a failure of leadership at one point, fine. However, we have a unique sort of situation where slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, the welfare state, single motherism, a long list of things that have been instigated by the state. No man, no group of men can provide what the state can provide. There's no competition.
Oh, so
And
you say, okay, good. You say that philosophically you have the tendency, perhaps temperamentally as well, to hold men responsible. But maybe you're providing a little excuse for them now, saying, "Hey, how can we compete when we're competing with the government? Right? The government is out there giving all this,
more
spreading the
than an
largesse."
excuse, less of an excuse and more of an explanation of the scenario. Because even if you talk about in just raw dollars, no man can provide this sort of living that a woman can sustain if she takes these checks from the government. And in addition, she's able to take the check plus maintain her own autonomy. In other words, she doesn't have to submit to anyone. Strong and independent, and don't need no man. But the taxpayer is actually the man she actually needs. So it's a sort of a misnomer there.
I see. So what do you have to say about that, Dr. K? You think that this the government aspect is significant here? That, what the government has done is has spoiled the market. Let's say it's like what they did with education, where they give all these loans out. Therefore, the price of education goes up, and it's hard to compete. Here, you have they're giving out money. As you say, well, just call it welfare. Okay, say welfare, and it's easier to get these things when there's no man in the house, or it's also easier to get these things when you're right there at the bottom. If you try to lift yourself up from the bottom, boom, they cut off the help, right? There's that middle wasteland, generally called the middle class, where there's no help at all, where it's just sometimes for some people, it's easier to just snap back at the bottom. So what do you have to say about that, Dr. K? And also, I'm holding your feet to the fire too. Are black men the weakest link here?
Yeah. So I mean, if a person wants to be at the top and stop being at the bottom, first of all, they're gonna stop claiming LGBT, right? So yes. So that's the first step. Second step. You saw it coming. So, anyways, yeah. Look, the system. I would say that the system is gonna be like this whenever anything happens, right? You can't have a forever unsaturated environment for everybody to thrive, right? Is it Generation X? I don't really know the name of it, but they were able to get houses for cheap, 30K, 50K, etc. So within a few years of saving, even on one person's salary, they could afford to actually invest in property. But obviously, as there's more development, obviously more population, etc., these things, commodities become more expensive. Same thing with education. So the thing is, there's going to always be a key opportunity where you're able to exploit. And right now we have globalism. We have the ability to work from anywhere and expand our own resources. Africa right now is basically like the Wild West. Just give an example. So the point is, it's not the government doing anything, because the government is just stabilizing the system, because if they don't do it, the system will collapse on itself, because saturation begins to happen automatically anyways. So I wouldn't say that the government did this, because what would happen is that there isn't enough high-level jobs anyways for all these people. Unfortunately, we all can't, a statistical significant number of us living in American economy, American type economies, cannot earn the same amount as everybody else with the market, with the local market within ground. So no, the government is actually just fixing the game so that our mindset is not over on that. Otherwise, we will start believing that meritocracy is a farce. So I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I get the point, and I've made the point before about trying to escape welfare, etc. You're stuck there. I mean, that's all true, but the kinds of person that's going to be stuck there isn't really built mentally to succeed, because if they were, they would be able to escape from that quicksand.
Okay.
And that's the reality. If they can't escape that game, then surely they wouldn't succeed in the other game, which is less regulated.
All right, so one can do something like look at some other examples and say, okay, is it everywhere where social democracy exists, where there's a large welfare state, right? You go to Scandinavia and you say, hey, it's not necessary, or doesn't necessarily follow that when you have large welfare state that all of a sudden the men are going to become useless or the women are going to leave the men, blah blah blah. It is something else, perhaps something cultural or something else, Dr. Thunder, perhaps. Because this now it's sounding like the argument you would typically make, which you will say, no, it's not about these other things, that welfare didn't have to destroy you, right? is in other words, you were right for real, like you get the point.
Yeah, the welfare thing is interesting. You know, so what is this? The poor will always be with you. This biblical truism, and what we have done is we have said, okay, well, the poor will be with you, but we're going to still make sure that you have, 3 square meals and a place to stay, and are still able to maintain your autonomy and still have all of this sort of modern amenities. Of course, that creates a scenario where you have incentivized people to stay the same, to not improve, to not get any better. And so that's going to have a deleterious impact on society, on a particular community. If you don't have to do anything to improve, then that's going to tend to spread because, laziness, right? So if you're lazy and you still are able to get over, then what is the purpose of hard work? Now, to this point of the people that are on welfare would not, the reason that they stay on welfare is because they're the ones that wouldn't be able to escape anyway. I get that to a certain extent, but unless we're going to make some assessments about the kinds of people, racial groups even, that mostly populate the, that are mostly on welfare, not by total numbers, but by percentages. And unless you're going to say, well, see, black people don't have what it takes to dig themselves out. That's why disproportionately they're at the bottom. I'd argue that there are systemic things that have at least gotten the ball rolling, and that we have basically doubled down on dysfunction. And that's why we are where we are.
All right. So, Dr. K, how about we start from the internal aspect here? Okay. Is it worthwhile to be, what would be a man from, let me not put words in your mouth. What is this masculinity then from the inside out, from the inside perspective? What and how is it lacking in today's day and age, in today's climate?
All right. Perfect question. What is a man? I think a man is your Serengeti East African. That's your real man out there. The Maasai, right? You see a lot of white women going to Kenya, Tanzania to marry a Maasai, a dusty Kenyan villager with no education, can barely speak English, right? But a white woman from Sweden, the apex of feminism, would rather marry that. Why do you think she's doing that? Simple, because he's masculine. And what is this masculinity? Simple. These Maasais sleep around outside of the village to protect the women and children from the lions, right? They kill a lion when they're 13. Masculinity is understanding your role in this world is fixed, and it's fixed by nature, the laws of nature, right? What that means is, as a man, there's some expectations. You take on the blunt end of the stick. That means you are going to be the first one out of bed when there's some strange noises at night on the door. That is masculinity. Masculinity is also understanding that you have to take on pressures in your head without having to cry about it to your wife every night. Woo, my white bosses make fun of me. That's masculinity. You got to take it on. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't express your pent up frustration, pain, emotions. No, you do that stuff with your friends, people that you trust, but not your family. You don't put that stress on your family. Masculinity is really just understanding that as a man, there are things in life that you will have to go through that whether you think it's fair or unfair, it's irrelevant because that's your role. And femininity would be the same thing. A woman risks her life giving birth. That's part of the whole game. So masculinity is actually truly just understanding your role in this life, being stoic and all the other stuff that we already know, right? But I'm just giving practical examples and making that money and stop complaining about it and not being dusty.
Yeah, I was watching a Rollo Tomasi earlier today, and he was doing a pretty in-depth look at the differences between the male brain and the female brain. And there's a recent study that came out where a female scientist did all these studies of the brain, and I guess it's in New York Times. And they basically saying that we are totally different. Our brains are different. Our brains are different in the womb. They're different. And the reason that they're different is because we are supposed to do different. Okay, there we go. And this whole, we were meant to do different things. And this whole insisting that men embrace their feminine side, all of that stuff is hogwash. It's contributed to the decline of Western society. And this is insistence that we are all the same, and we can function the same in roles, all the monkeying around with roles, these traditional roles, questioning traditional roles. All of that stuff is silly stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's what my telling tells me. Is like, first of all, masculinity in this world is growing up. Let's say if you have children, you have a daughter or son. Part of the masculinity is actually being able to show them how to survive in this world, first and foremost. Also, reducing the level of stress on them, right, by exposing them a little bit of toughness, etc. Because if you have a perfect life, and shout out to the brother that mentioned the comment about two unproductive people coming together. If you have two productive people, right,
MOT.
you have someone there. Yeah. What was his name?
MOT. Man of
right,
Tomorrow.
yeah. Man of Tomorrow, exactly. If you go a woman who's built herself, worked on her femininity, you have a man that's worked on himself, developed his masculinity. What that means is if you build a family, those children are going to get the best doses of things to allow them to actually live in this world. Because when you have this matriarchal or toxic matriarchy that's being projected and injected into especially black families right now, you're going to have a one-sided poison that's going to be basically too much of anything is poison, right? So if you then don't have your boys learning how to actually survive in this world, they're going to lead broken families as well themselves. Same thing with the girls. If you don't give them, go ahead.
Yeah. Look. I did I almost did a live stream earlier today of me changing the brakes on my car. Okay. Now, the significance of this is that, and I'll probably do a stream tomorrow morning. Talking about this in depth. But the significance of it is that my father taught me how to do that. And you know how many hundreds, thousands of dollars that I have saved from being able to change my own brakes on my car?
Give us the value there, because I'm sure it's not the thousands of dollars that you saved. Is that why you're going to show people? And is that the value you got from your father teaching you? Is that why you're bringing it up?
Well, I think it's been of more significance when I was younger to be able to save the money.
Mhm.
More of the issue is the ability to manipulate, to learn how to um uh take care of your own stuff, not to have to go to somebody else, to be able to fix your own stuff. The whole uh uh the whole what am I'm searching for this. It's not just do it yourself. It's not just being self-sustaining. It's not just depending on yourself, not looking to somebody else for something, right? All of that stuff, to the extent that you can do that, more things that you can do that way, where you don't have to ask somebody else to do it. That seems to me to be a critical component of manhood. But what makes you a man? Changing the oil in my car. Even knowing how stuff like how to change the fuses. Where's the fuse box in the car? Now a lot of these modern cars, it's very difficult to do anything other than maybe change the brakes.
Okay.
Because everything is a computer chip.
So,
but the point here, yeah, go ahead.
You see, there's something that underlies what you're saying, right? Which is what me, and that doesn't necessarily have to be for everyone else, but I like getting to the underlying things, right? So you mentioned the doing of some activity, the logic of doing that activity, the ability to manipulate this particular thing, okay? And it's a thing as opposed to a person, by the way. That's a key difference, right? Manipulate some object in the world, right? Which is why I talk about stoic bearing of responsibility having to do with the conquest of the external world, right? Which is whether it be a lion or a fire or a bridge or a oil change, right? So There's something about that which is fundamentally different from dealing with people. So I like that you brought the shall we say the data point of the you've given us the tactile thing to work with. Let's try to abstract it a little bit. So Dr. K, in MBTI terms, in psychology terms, this is TE Dr. Thunder is describing. He's saying, what's being a man? Man is TE work. That just means the logic of the external things, right? Logic of external things, logic of the car change, logic of all those types of things where feelings tends not to be involved. It is thinking, and it's thinking about external things. And typically we talk about rationality versus emotionality, right? One can start to see how these divides start to drop, right? Now, Dr. K, is rationality in terms of TE or maybe even TI, and TI is just pure logic, by the way. TI is just logic, not the logic of changing brakes, but the logic of non-contradiction, for example, which is meta to anything. Nothing has to exist for you to deduce or for you to come up to just know it. It is just this axiomatic meta axiom, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, that's TI. Is rationality, Dr. K, a requisite for masculinity? Because Dr. Thunder kind of is saying that by his oil change thing, even though not in so many words.
Yeah.
But before you answer that, and think about it before you answer, because we got super chats in the building, okay? And that is very much appreciated, right? And if I get my stuff to work, I got Sons of Ham, $5 super chat from Sons of Ham. Thank you very much. And you say, how would Donald Trump say this? Is it 1 Corinthian? Inside joke. 1 Corinthians 16:13. Okay. Be on the alert. Stand firm in the faith. Act like men. Be strong. Okay. That is one super chat. And then there is the other from Gail, the multinational, international, supernatural moderator of all these YouTube spaces. Spanning the entire globe. Shout out to you for your $2 super chat that get the likes up. So I see that perhaps you like the Corinthians quote there, Dr. K, and also on this thing about rationality, which Dr. Thunder inadvertently introduced by talking about spark plugs. Is that a necessary thing for manhood?
Well, I don't want to confuse people, so I won't try to be as thorough as I want to be. But anyways, I would say actually women are better at logic than
Are
men.
you saying people? Are you gonna take that audience? He just said.
Hey, they didn't catch it, man. Don't go around putting me under the skillet too soon. But I would say that women are actually better at logic. Men are better at logistics. So what I'm trying to say here is a woman's femininity is more about fairness, right? It's TI, introverted logic. It's okay. You know, if you create a system, they're all about everyone having equality and all that kind of stuff. However, a man's version of logic, or what Dr. Thunder explained, is the way of how things work. Exactly. And the consistency of making things work. Because the thing is, logic is not going to tell you how to make something work. You have to go trial and error. You have to put things together. You have to take things apart, and then you have to try to figure out how you can fix them. That's where men actually need to really grow. The logistics element. Do we have enough, etc., money to make sure the house is still running? We're not somehow living off the streets. That's where masculinity comes in, right? Femininity is all about, okay, how do we create the best experience with what we have? And then how do we expand that and then, create the best home, etc. So I would say men are better at TE, what Dr. Zana just explained, the ways of things and how they work. Women are actually better at kind of telling you, hey, hang on, that's not quite right.
How about this?
That's
How about
not
that?
quite fair.
And by the way, the tactical TI, which is bad behavior, is what is seen as goalpost shifting with women, by the way. That's why it's like, it can be very irrational when it comes to moving the goalpost around to fit something.
Right.
Which,
They're great at
by
that.
ignoring the bigger
Stuff.
picture and just moving
Right.
within
They
this
ignore right. They won't go to the true logical conclusion. They'll stick it to wherever it suits them and wherever their mindset is at. That's now the problem with them. And then you as a man have to be able to catch that bad behavior and just be like, no. Can I give one simple example before you go ahead?
Go ahead.
I sent you that video earlier, right? It's a woman speaking about abortion, right? And the woman is like, a woman asked the woman, it's like, hey, do you think that a woman should be able to have an abortion? Yeah, of course. Then the woman asked the other woman, it's like, okay, fine. So do you think a man should be able to financially divorce himself from a baby that you chose without his consent to bring into this world? She's like, no, because, he knew before he, stuck his XYZ inside, sweet watery guts, etc. And he accepted the consequences at that moment of the baby potentially being born. And I'm like, bro, if you just extend that same logic to you knew there's a potential of a baby before you do the same thing with him. But they won't do that. That's called tactical TI. Is when women start behaving badly. Now, you as a masculine man must be able to say, look, stop this BS. You know I'm right. You're wrong. You explain to her and you leave it there. You don't argue. You don't go around into some back and forth nonsense. That's not masculinity, man. That's a beta male behavior that they don't like.
So, Dr. Thunder, what do you think about that? About, because you started out with this kind of doing of things, and then we said that, it kind of represents itself in terms of the way we also think as men, the way we should think as men, thinking long term, or shall we say end goal. Does it work overall versus what you may consider to be fair? Somebody may say that men should be more system thinkers. Like, what is the system that's going to work as opposed to a ideal thing, or like, what is the fair, what's utopia, right? And then you visualize utopia, but then you have to say, well, what's the system that's going to get us there, as opposed to just keep on, hey, we're not in utopia, we're not in utopia, we're not in utopia. It's like, well, this is how it has to be. This is the only way it'll work. This is the nature of the matter, right? In other words, men will recognize that, hey, you cannot just keep on bending this thing forever. It's going to break. That is spark plug logic, right? It's the world of the thing about how the external world works. I want to expand a little bit more upon that, because you're going to make that video, aren't you?
I am. I think that this whole kind of hands-on thing, we say that all the time. And even when we talk about like the educational system, where boys prefer hands-on activities because that's the way that we're wired. That's the way that we make sense of things, where the girls are able to just sit there for long periods of time and read a book or do certain things that seem pretty abstract. They don't seem to have a particular goal in mind, right? They're able to engage in those kind of behaviors for long periods of time, longer periods of time, I'll say. because they're all still kids and they're still, both developing. But yeah, I mean, that's I think even from very young, we exhibit these differences, and so this idea that we have taught the boys to basically distance themselves from their from their emotions, from their feelings, and then that's why they grow up to be these tyrants and unfeeling and only dealing with rationality and all this kind of stuff. That's false right from the beginning. It's actually the case is that we notice that the boys are a certain way, and we give them things that would feed whatever that knack they tend to have is, and we do the same thing for the girls.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the educational system doesn't do that. There's a reason why 93% of the high school valedictorians and class presidents are female. And
Well,
it's
they'll
been
tell
that
you
way
that,
for a long
because
time.
now we have women in there, and women are showing that they're better than men, and that the general value of everything increases when you add women in it, because whatever a man can do, a woman can do better. Okay, that's but your point is taken. Your point is taken, and we got someone else joining us in the panel. But first, let me see if I can add audio to this thing here.
You remember, you got to click that little thing.
Yeah, I clicked the thing, but I think there's that.
Why? No, because
Can you
if
hear now?
you had sex with a woman, you fully know well that
Yeah,
one
we
of
can
the
hear it.
consequences is that you will fully pregnant her and you have a child. So you have to look after the child as that's your responsibility. Your sperm, your responsibility. Okay, you can't run away from that. Okay, I don't understand why people in their mind think it's all right to run away from the child. That's a child. You're leaving them with so much trauma, having no dad and everything.
The
That will
cameraman
leave
got
them
dizzy
with
from the.
severe, ideas of how they think
From all
about
the
men.
goalposts
Because
shifting.
And if we get pregnant, we have the right not to be mothers, right?
yeah.
Should men then, in the name of equality, have the right not to be fathers? Their wallet, their choice. They can sign off on child support.
And then she said that. Now, my only amendment to this, and it's just a tactical thing in terms of if I was going to do what she did, I would intersect something in between. She started out by saying, "Women, we get pregnant and we can have
Things happen to
choose not to
women.
have the baby, right?" Pardon me?
Things happen to women, right? But to men, they choose
Yeah,
things, and I think it's that element
I
of
would just.
agency
I would do it this
versus-
way, and let me
yeah,
see if it fits what you're thinking. But women get pregnant and they have the right to get rid of it, right? And then ask her, this is what I would intersect here. Does the man, have the right to say no, keep the baby, right? See what she says, right? Because if she says no, the man doesn't have the right, then you can be like, whoa, he doesn't have the right to say, you have the right to keep, and you have the right to keep his money. Like, dude, I don't think even this woman would be so crazy.
Oh no. I've had these people, trust me, it doesn't really matter, right?
Okay.
I've
I'm
spoke to
stupid
them.
then, I guess.
Yeah. I spoke to these people. They don't have that. How do I say this? They're not morally sentient people, right? If they think, right, that abortion is a perfectly reasonable format of contraception, their mindset is already warped. So they don't care about honesty, logic, consistency, fairness, as long as they can use that argument. My body, my choice. And I use the same argument. That's why I don't believe in government owning my body. That's why I would never enlist to any dusty army, right? I value myself. My body, my choice. Shout out to the women.
Okay. That is interesting.
Of course, when you just said "my body, my choice," it's altogether a different argument than when she said "my body, my choice." But those are just details.
And the theory of moral sentience. I've heard that one before, Dr. Thunder. We're gonna need to check out. Are there beings out there that are just too low level that moral judgment cannot be applied on them? I see them on YouTube every now and again. That's the question. But we got Elijah Amun in the building. Ladies and gentlemen, by the way, go ahead and click that like button. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Okay. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Click the notification bell. We have great conversations here all the time. Mr. Elijah Amun, what do you have to say on the topic here? What is the function of masculinity? Is there a dearth, a lack, an inadequacy of functional masculinity in the community? Are black men the weakest link? What's going on?
So yeah, first off, I'll say that thank you for inviting me. But the obvious basis of masculinity is exactly what Kay was saying. It is the will to do something and to be proud of doing it. So when someone gives you an order, you obey the order for the greater good, even if you're not recognized or you're not appreciated. You do it because you believe that there is a greater good. It stems on faith. It is non-material because you cannot somehow extract a man's thoughts and present it to someone unless we lived in a alternate universe that was that case. So this collapses in Western society because in Western society we are led to believe that materialism and material worship is the only logical way of seeing the world. So this logical perspective that we have been raised to believe, we deny masculinity because of the fact that it isn't material. It's just a universal concept that exists, and yet it's a phenomenon. And now masculinity is definitely unique on certain people. So this goes on to the topic of black men and even white men. I think as a Christian and African, I say that Africans' moral obligation is a lot different because we've always been raised in our history to respect the wisdom of elders. And wisdom comes from those who actually have experience, and that experience makes them have wise thoughts. An ignorant person can be old, but a wise person is someone who actually applies that experience. Yet in Western society, we belittle them, and this is actually a good topic for.
Call them misogynists.
Yeah, we call them misogynists, and I was actually about to get to that point. Andrew Tate's view, all of it aside, when the West says that his views are a threat and danger to the community, what he's actually saying is that this man who was raised by a black father, he was raised with the traditional black family household. Under that man, his black traditional views is a danger to West society, and we cannot tolerate that, and we cannot allow that. So I think it's specifically black masculinity that is really the threat of the West.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That is so it's not necessarily just the moral ambiguity of masculinity, but it's also black masculinity. It is unique on itself because if you look at history, black masculinity has led to not progression, it led to restoration. They restored what was lost. And what was that restoration? It was the restoring of their identities, their morality, their culture. It led to rap and the black leaders that you saw in the past. Now we live in a society today where that does not exist. We live in a society where black masculinity can be copied by a white man now. A white person could basically make black culture not unique, which makes it not really a culture if it can't be unique to a certain people. So that would be my stance on that, is that black masculinity is a unique attribute that our ancestors has used, and it is a danger. It has been proven that is a danger by how Andrew Tate was reacted. And it just shows you that our white society that calls us allies really are our enemies.
Okay, so let me straighten something out here. You mentioned that yes, there's a decline in masculinity. You mentioned something about Western society and materialism leading in that particular direction inevitably, right? So it's like, okay, cool, makes sense. And then you mentioned that there's a particular brand of masculinity also under attack, the black masculinity. All the while though, you haven't talked about the individual male out there. Is he pulling his weight? Or all these excuses? Like, what are you doing with regards to your masculinity, for example? How do you overcome these seemingly insurmountable odds that are out there?
So the question or the answer I give, and this also works for when people say, what are you doing to help? Black community or the African community. This stems to what are you doing to carry the legacy of your father and your father's father, and then the brothers around you. The legacy is what counts. Because when you look at the legacy of Black leaders and their masculinity, you want to carry that by being better than them or try to at least be in par with them. So by accepting that you are a masculine Black man, that is revolutionary on its own, especially in a society that we're living in right now. Because now when you create a community who thinks Black masculine men, you're going to create leaders for that movement. So what I'm doing is that I'm accepting the reality, and I could even push that forward by enforcing it. So when you have power, you could enforce that as well. But for people, some people in this world can't do that. And I say that as long as you just accept it and believe it and carry it, so the ancestors that died for you is not in vain, that is revolutionary on its own. But to be ignorant to it is you're now the enemy of our community.
Okay, so Dr. Thunder, and well put. Well, you answered the question nicely there. So Dr. Thunder, Elijah is saying, okay, he's affirming it. He's coming out and he's saying, here, I stand with Andrew Tate, and that this is a great action. Not to affirm it, meaning, okay, he's dealing with the challenges, and he is developing the skills, and he's a functionally masculine person. But also coming out to affirm it is something that he's able to do. Let me ask you, Dr. Thunder, you do the same thing as well. What is stopping, or what are the impediments, like, or what made you special? How come you were able to not only develop these skills, but also come out? And I'm not saying you should take all the credit. You can talk about how you were raised or whatever it may be. But what is exactly the nature of the challenge here that people need to overcome in order to do the right things they need to do to be functionally masculine?
Well, it's courage. Courage is at the center of all of that. Especially today when you get clipped out of context, or heck, you get clipped in context saying something that is an absolute truism, quoting a Bible scripture or something, or whatever it is, and now they want to, come after you. Courage is, I think, is at the, it's the central component. It's what a real man is, right? Is willing to take a risk, a calculated risk, not a leap of faith per se. I don't like that expression, because faith, is the word in the New Testament that is translated as faith or confidence or believe in is the word pistis, the Greek word pistis. And pistis literally means to argue to the point of belief. So that's very masculine, actually, that idea of faith. Whereas the sort of, pop Christian, sorry to say, very much feminized version of Christianity embraces this much more feelings-based approach to faith, right? Where it is very loosey-goosey, and so that whole leap of faith, is appropriate for that. But for traditional Christianity, traditional religion, that old time religion, as it were, is very masculine. I did a stream, what was it, yesterday or the day before yesterday? Well, it was that stream where I was talking about, is masculinity, masculinity compatible with traditional religion or traditional Christianity? And the answer to that question is absolutely yes. Absolutely it is. In the red pill spaces, you hear a lot of folks saying and claiming that the church is blue pill. But the Bible, many of the same folks that would say that will say that the Bible is red pill, right? And so something has happened over the last 40 years, 50 years, whatever it is, that has taken this so-called old-time religion and pushed it into this very much feminized, over-feminized. See, now here's the thing. It's not about having a feminine perspective on church, the Bible, Christianity. That's not the problem. The problem is it's a matter of balance. What is the proper balance of that? And we've gone way over in one particular direction. So again, I would say courage, I think, is at the center of this thing, and that is, if there is nothing else that we can call masculine, courage is definitely masculine.
So, Dr. K, do you have anything to add on this? Because so far we've been kind of talking about the internal sides of masculinity. Many things have been said, including attacks on masculinity. And still, let me poke you from this angle. African Millennial mentioned in the chat that their protectors don't exist anymore, and we all know about the protection thing, right? Black men don't protect. Okay, is this true? Okay, and is this the lack of courage that we're talking about? The lack of courage, the lack of power, or the lack of stable systems that men control, such as a stable family system under which they can reign and rule. One. Go ahead, explain. You said it's the last one. Stable systems that they control.
Look, you see, if you're in an environment like this, women's opinions do matter. So when African millennials think, okay,
so you have to be in an environment where women's opinions don't matter, right? That's the okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So when if you want a successful family situation whereby you are a ruler, you call yourself a king, she's a queen or a subject, it doesn't really matter. You have to actually be able to give your subjects what they want. Now, the women have been crying that we're not protected. What is this whole protection thing, right? First of all, you can't protect them in the street with their bad behavior where they try to get you to fight someone else, break your hand, get killed, or worse, in jail, right, by killing someone else. So no, that's not how you're going to protect them. When they talk about protection, they mean they're not covered. And that covering is partly what the two brothers said and what Dr. Thanda actually just said, now courage. We lack the courage to live our life with us dominating at every single level. The black woman is willing to submit herself to the white man in the corporate environment, but she's not willing to submit to you for a reason, because you are not at the top of your own domain. And this is why she's rather dating the thug, the hoodlum, the pookies in their area, because they are in their respective fields. There's no white man above them, at least not a visual one. Maybe there is a boogie white man controlling the drug trade at the top, right? But in her own vision, she sees you at the top. So if we lack the courage to be able to rule our immediate environment.
How about this complication? Let's say I wasn't at the top, okay? But I had a strong, let's say I was an Ethiopian in, I don't know, wherever these Ethiopians
dusty desert.
Whatever these dusty Ethiopians, the Somalis, whoever the hell these people on the channel. And who else? Who were the dusties here?
The dusty philosopher. There's probably DI somewhere there.
Yeah, those people. Yeah.
And also we got Sudanese brother over here. So
black
all
as
these,
hell.
The Bible says to shake the dust off your feet.
Shake the dust off your feet, Ashley.
Bye, Somalis.
I was some dusty in Washington, in the DC area, in the DMV area. I'm not on top. I'm not in the White House. I'm not in whatever, but I have a strong, intact culture, right? What about that wrinkle in your thing there? It's like, the women don't see us on top. Okay, but if I have a culture,
no, but you see, they don't see top, you on top. Go with, they don't see the individual on top necessarily. They have to see a representative of you on top. This issue is not in Nigeria because the archetype of a Nigerian man, right?
Go ahead.
Right. The archetype of a Nigerian man is a leader, a powerful man that chops their money. So they understand that if they just go and find a Nigerian man, they'll be able to get the money. But in the Western world, there isn't a representation. And this is why representation matters. We need to have more black men literally killing it out there so that the image can change. And this is where Kevin Samuels actually had a part to play. This is what I'm talking about. Successful brothers that are doing something that are visible. You were an example. Dr. Thunder is an example. Me, however dusty I am, right? People can think I'm dusty, etc. But I'm also an example. Like, hey, you can be dusty in your own way and still inspire hope. The point is, we need the courage as Black men to succeed so that we can change the image, so that the Black woman can actually be looking at a dusty nerd like me and be like, oh, hey, that is desirable. Shout out, shout out.
All right. So before I get around to you, Dr. Thunder, Elijah here, I want you to address the thing that Dr. K did not exactly explicitly address. He addressed it generally speaking, that okay, it's the image and all these kinds of things. Because he started out by saying the power isn't there. African millennial is not feeling protected because Black men are dusty. Okay. And then I say, hey, how about those Ethiopians over there that are not quote unquote in power, but somehow they have that community where there's an intact culture and all that. What are the specifics of that? You say materialism, and that's why I'm bringing it back to you. So the anti-materialist picture is some kind of a top-down, hierarchical, even metaphysical culture where God is on top and the man, and then the blah, 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 right? Is that the kind of a solution? How does one begin to implement that? Because regardless of what, how one may, because I think it's the same thing Dr. K is saying, okay, this kind of overarching structure. How does one begin to do that?
They do have that though in Ethiopian culture.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that was the point. I was like, that's why I gave you the point of like, look, these Ethiopians are not on top in DC, but their community is intact, right?
Right.
So it's not just a on top thing. Right?
Well, it is on top, right? Because when they come over here, first of all, they're not scattered, right? They're not individual families. They all go into the same regions.
So
they live
on
in the
top,
same environment.
Intact seem to be one and the same thing. So something that keeps them intact, something hierarchical, structural, some kind of a thing that keeps them intact is seen by the women as on top.
Exactly. And also, if they don't marry their own men who are also Orthodox, who practice, Eastern Orthodox tradition, according to that, well, let's say the Sudanese and Egyptians, Coptic Christianity, all of that matters. You have to marry your own religion, which is so important. The mothers, the culture and everything, they get indoctrinated. And of course, if they marry out and then start bringing dust into the family, that is going to lead them to be excommunicated from that environment. So there is a strong cultural, togetherness whereby there is strength and power at the top. There's a patriarch.
Gotcha. So we got it there. Thoughts on that, Elijah, and then Dr. Thunder. This patriarchal order, this structure, this intactness, this systematic thing whereby if you have it, it doesn't matter if you are a slave in Babylon, somehow women will still be, the whole family unit will still be intact. Can you speak on that? Because you brought up the whole materialism thing being a point from which we erred or something.
Yeah. So this really all stems from fear, because in the East, and even East Africa and in Upper Egypt, and really anywhere in Africa, we have been raised that there are things that we cannot see that are out of our control that happen if you do not obey these certain laws. And with this fear, we've come to basically, it's a subconscious thing to act a certain way. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily indoctrination, because it's just like how democracy works. Democracy doesn't work based off of people being rational, because humans aren't rational. Democracy works because people fear what could happen without that democratic government. Americans fear what would happen or what America would look like without the American government. It's fear that is a motivator. So in materialism, you take the fear from things that you cannot see. So now you are ignorant to things like a tree that falls from a place that you can't see. So you just say, it might have happened, or it could have happened, and you just do these hypotheticals, these pseudosciences. And in the worship of materialism, all you're gonna get is just a straight line of constant, how I would say, like miss sounds and misplacements. You could get your happiness if you take this thing, or you could take that thing, but this all stems from if you believe in things that you cannot see. And that is a prevalent thing in Africa. In America, you are seen as less smart or a fool to not somehow just believe in things that can be proven, because you can't really prove the objectiveness of masculinity. Like it's all just something like a comparative thing. Masculinity is a comparison. You can't really somehow measure it, and that's why it's rejected so much.
But masculinity is a directive.
Yeah,
it's a directive. Subdue the earth. Right? It's a directive. It's something that we were told to do. It was a behavior that and even after the fall, there were specific curses, as it were, that would apply to men and ones that would apply to women. And the ones for men had to do with sweat from the brow and the pushing of the plow and in all the back-breaking labor. Right. So this is interesting. I was thinking about this is interesting. Okay, so I did a show. This is a long time ago. I'm gonna have to do another show on this. Multiculturalism plus deregulated dating market equals divestment. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because when we start talking about being the top in more black men being seen as the top of the top, as it were, and then that having a particular impact on if our women are going to submit to us or not, and then therefore not complain about not being protected, right? Because there's a direct relationship between obedience and protection. You cannot protect someone that won't obey. It's not possible, right? So the problem with the multiculturalism thing and how this sort of muddies the water is that what it does by definition is it puts the white man at the very top of the hierarchy, right? Because it's white society that is deciding which aspects of these cultures and this multiculture will be celebrated, will be put forward. And what it does is it ends up giving whoever it is on the top, in this case, like I said, the white man, it gives him the pick of the litter. And since women are naturally hypergamous, they're going to keep trying to date up, as it were. They're going to keep seeing. I mean, I was watching something earlier when this woman, I think it was on CGA.
You want to tell people what hypergamy is? I think we probably have a few new people in the chat. Okay, hypergamy just means that women tend to date, marry across and above socioeconomic lines. Like women don't go down. Women don't go down to the slums and pick, let's not get into Rollo Tomasi's dual strategy.
It's almost always up. It's
almost
never
always
down.
up. Yeah. Like a man is
always up.
Even if she's a six-figure, independent, don't need no man, she's always like, yeah, but I want the men to have at least what I've got.
My left toast twin sister, Melinda, who lives 5 streets across from me, actually married someone who's poorer than her.
Oh, so you're doing that Brian logic now?
Yeah.
Anyways, whatever. Well, in my street,
this is an anomaly, right?
I'm sure he's trolling us.
Not the rule. Yeah. So, but anyhow, so the reason that this is so important. So I was watching CGA, and there was a woman on there, a black woman. I mean, he was rolling a clip. And she was talking about how, it's the standard thing. How am I, why am I going to date someone or marry someone that can't elevate my status, that can't give me a better level of living? Why am I going to go down? Because there's no way that I'm going to do that, since I'm able to provide all of this stuff for myself at this level, right? So one of the sort of insidious things that's happening, and that has happened to black men, and this is what I was talking about, this sort of systemic component, is that our women have been promoted in an attempt to elevate them above us. And what that does is it makes so that the black men would be undesirable, because we wouldn't even be desired by our own women, because their nature is going to be hypergamous, to date up. Since 1976, black women have achieved twice the number of college degrees as black men. So even our educational systems are playing this game of creating even less of a parity, even with respect to education. Okay, and so this plays it's a deleterious impact on our community structure, and it exacerbates this problem. So in a multiculturalism sort of in a multiculture, in a melting pot, whatever you want to call America, it by definition and by default promotes and elevates the white man as the most desirable, and then makes it harder and harder for minority men to compete, because now all of the women of these other cultures have closer access to who is on the top, right? So there's a problem there. And every time you hear these points, even when I think they think they mean it well. Now, of course, this is not true. This whole black women are the most educated women, all this kind of stuff, it's actually not true. Okay. However, when it is said over and over, even white women getting on TikTok and saying, hey, black women are the most educated women and blah, 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 like this. Actually, what they're doing is it's doubling down on the hypergamy. It's creating this appearance of an imbalance. It's exacerbating that appearance of imbalance. And actually by that constant refrain, even by white people claiming how educated black women are, again, it's another slap. It's another smack in the face of the black man. Right? So all of this stuff is sort of happening in real time, and all of these, these lies and all of this misinformation about us, and about the dynamics in our relationships. A lot of our women are telling all, as it were, about how dysfunctional and how terrible black men are with regularity, which gives the general society the appearance that they must be giving us the straight scoop, right? Because it would be one thing if it was white people that were slandering us, but when it's our own people, when it's our own women slandering us, that creates a hole that you can't get out of. So anyhow, just to finish this up, the whole point is the end game of multiculturalism is divestment. It is divestment. It's when the women say our own men are not good enough for us, and then try to, as much as they can, try to date someone else.
So, Dr. K, both, all of us so far have laid out a few things on the table, right? Many things. But let's start to talk a little bit about balance, leadership, and functionality with regards to the complaints of your fellow East African here on the screen. Talking about abuse of power, right? And the men whom think that they're God. This is a Muslim person. I'm sure they're probably talking from particular experience.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, so functional, let's go back to those skills now. And these would be interpersonal skills, personal skills, mastery of subjective consciousness, to use my freaking thing. What are those things that will put you in a position of kingship, leadership, without abusing it, right? One archetype, by the way, to follow is there's this thing called, and you may perhaps elaborate on this archetype, the quiet African dad. And Dr. Thunder, this is the guy. The quiet African dad, that's a typical African dad, okay? He doesn't say much. He never really talks. Doesn't talk to the kids, okay? Mamiza May, the lady in the chat, this is her name, enemy. She keep complaining about that African men are too much like this. He doesn't say anything. He reads the paper. He provides for the family. He protects and does all that kind of stuff. But he's just stoic to perhaps some say to a
drink
fault.
His beer by himself. Doesn't get drunk in a foolish way. Just is there.
He's just
reads
there.
His paper.
That's one way not to abuse power, where, obviously everyone knows he's there, but he's just kind of very detached. But anyways, what are the ways that one could go about doing this, not to abuse power, to be in a good position of leadership and whatnot?
Right. Actually, so first of all, I think what she's doing is she's conflating someone with a low introspection with an abuse of power. So the two things are different. There are people who just abuse power, but are very introspective. And there are also people that so-called abuse power and not introspective. So what's really happening there is the person is out there, because think about a doer, right? You have a wrench on my channel. Most people who are mods have the wrench in my power. And of course, as I see it, many people, if they don't like what people are saying, they use that power over there. And it's really, I've been doing an experiment, right? So what makes it so the point is
power drunk wrench holders, or that's a good sign. That's a good
of course one. And this
People
is a perfect example.
See what she does with it.
It's crazy. So I've actually never used the wrench actually on my own channel against people, but that's fine. That's the mod's jobs. I don't get involved in that stuff. The point is, if you marry someone, this is going to be selective from you. If you marry someone, you need to choose someone who you've seen these behaviors whereby they are not mad with power. You need to see that this person can apologize for a mistake that they've done, truly apologize. That's a big sign for someone who can actually be corrected in the future. Because it's not about the abuse of power, really. It's the fact that if someone has that leadership potential, they will do what they think that power allows them to do. It's not really abuse in their own head. The point is, what's really happening is you need to marry someone who can do the basics. Can they apologize? Can they keep quiet? Can they let you win? And by win, I mean just let you have your way sometimes. If you don't see these things, don't get involved, because as a woman especially, you are giving that level of your autonomy to this other person to some extent. If you can't trust them, don't get involved. I think that's what I'll say, because there are going to be low-level people all over the place. And the thing is, if you're in certain communities and cultures, the older men will hold that man responsible, but you still don't want to be under a man who is just incompetent of leading you. So I would say, yes, look for those skills. Can they say sorry? Can they truly change their behavior after saying sorry? A simple example is this. They told you, use swear words, insert bad words over here. When they're angry, you tell them, I didn't like that. They go and apologize. They say, you know what? I'll try not to do it again. Hey, guess what? You create some other situation. He's really pissed off at you. You see if he can actually change that behavior and he's actually teachable. If he's not, don't even bother. Who cares if he looks better
and
than
it's
my
averages,
left
right?
cousin?
I hate to be stupid and low level, but you got to the average number has to go down, because people's personality is kind of fixed. If you're like me and you're the kind of person that doesn't like to pay attention to details, right? I'm not gonna all of a sudden become a gearhead like Dr. Thunder, right? The point is, but if I make some attempts to look at buttons from time to time and push them correctly, then I'm moving in the right direction, right? But if you try to change with Dr. Thunder, that's gonna be crazy, right?
But you don't try to change someone. You want to see if someone can actually respond to a specific thing that you stated to him, which is important to you. And also, I want to respond to Dua. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. That is just a Western media facade. It's not a thing, right?
Okay, so let me say this.
Right.
Why is it not a thing? Basically, it's not complicated. It's simple. It's like one of those things where if the law already exists, which let's say it's theft, there's no reason to start talking about black male theft or male theft, female theft, the Jew theft. It's like it's theft. In this case, it's lack of self-awareness, right? That's how you have couched it. Lack of self-awareness. People who are not self-aware, they're not conscious of their actions. and we know they unconsciously project all the time, and we can sense this intuitively, even though we don't have the words and all that kind of stuff. We know that type of person. They don't know how to apologize, narcissistic even. So why now bring in this thing called toxic masculinity
No,
when
there's
we
no
already
such
know
thing.
what these 7 deadly sins and
Right.
all these other things are? It's like there's
Well,
no
yeah,
reason to import a new word.
Well, the reason is to double down on the slandering of masculinity.
Yeah, exactly. That's the usual reason why somebody will start to use those kinds of things.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as toxic there's toxic behavior and there is masculinity. The two things are very different. Masculinity does not involve abuse within it. In fact, it's to protect, to make
That's
sure
right.
that it's to cover. So no, there's no such thing. So I just want to point that there, Dua. I think some men are just simply low-level creatures that have not gone through basic introspection and wisdom, and that's why they behave that way. They're just behaving through their childhood traumas. So to be honest, we should blame their mothers.
Oh, let's go.
This guy. Okay, way to bring out the excitement from Dr. Thunder. we know where your freaking issues are. Okay, so you want to address what Dua is saying here about balance those skills of self-awareness, because one thing that I like that Dr. K mentioned, okay, is the letting somebody win. Okay, now this is not a good dance, easy dance to perform. I'm going to use my intuitive kind of language here again and mention the father, the African father that just completely disengages. That's one seemingly safe way to do it. But if you learn how to dance, where okay, I'm going to interact more, but also be firm and know how to bend a little bit, right? In other words, play jazz versus just, I'm just going to take. So how do you perhaps handle it? Are you a typical African father? Just no one ever hears from you? Or do you play a little bit, let the little rat win and all that kind of stuff? How do you handle it? And what tips would you give?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, it's that, what is that illustration, the Jordan Peterson thing about the, you got to let your, it's like when I'm wrestling with my son, if I just squash him out, it's just like, he's not going to want to do that. But if it seems like he can win, then he'll be more interested. And what started to happen is he is much more he has thanks Ike. He has gotten much more much more clever about knowing when I'm just basically phoning it in. And so now I have to figure out exactly what the intensity level I have to stay at so that he doesn't think that I'm just letting him win. Mm-hmm. Although he's a smart kid. He knows I'm letting him win.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He knows that I'm not, that I'm not going all out. He knows that. Mm-hmm. But if I just totally disengage and just okay, here, he's like, no, you got to try, Daddy. You got to try. Right. So it's an interesting.
It's interesting that what I envision there in that thing that you're doing, which is okay, the kid, the little rat, not that your son's a rat, but shout out to Jordan Peterson. He uses the big rat, little rat analogy with mammals all the time. The little rat and your kid knows, hey, of course you can win every time if you choose to. But if you do that thing where you're not trying, then you're not even acknowledging his existence. It's almost a kind of a perception of that. You're not even taking him seriously, right? You're not even in it, that kind of a thing. You're not acknowledging him, to use woke language. He doesn't feel seen or whatever that means, all that kind of stuff. So it seems like if you want to not be that stereotypical African dad that just never talks to anybody and is never seen and doesn't see anybody, that this is a happy medium to go in. I'll let you continue, Dr. Thunder, where you're interacting and you're finding the nuances of the interaction where people ultimately they just want you to take them seriously. They want you to play the game a little bit, even though they know, yes, you're busy and you're doing all these other things, and they know their stuff is not as important, but you can't just completely squash them. Well, anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I think part of the whole battle of the sexes, as it were, in many respects, is not really because women want to control everything or they want to rule the world. I think a lot of it is because, as you said, they want to be taken seriously, right? And I think about, like, certain kinds of conversations that seem to happen with regularity between men and women. So now, I already, I'm a pretty straight shooter, so I already know what it is that I'm going to say in a given circumstance. And there's certain things that I care about, and there's certain things that I just don't care about. Okay, so if a topic arises and it's something that I just don't care about, I'll say, okay, whatever you want to do is fine. But when they still want to continue to talk about it, that's the confirmation. That's the confirmation that it's an issue of sort of being heard, as it were, being seen as actually contributing something of value, right? I also see, because there's this whole. I think a lot of women feel as though if they don't have a significant income to contribute to the family, as it were, because of what society has taught them about needing to be independent in X, Y, and Z, that can be it's a wrestling match. It's a struggle, and it's not really because they want to be out there working, breaking their back, and it's not really because of that. I think a lot of it is, and perhaps I'm being generous, a lot of it is just this matter of I want to contribute something. I want to be seen as a person that's has valuable ideas, all of that kind of stuff. So you can't just agree. You have to go through the process of the conversation and then arrive where I was in the beginning anyway. I was going to say yes anyway, or okay, whatever you want to do. It's going to still be the same as same thing. So
100%.
Thing is interesting.
It's that whole, we got to swim through the river when we could have just taken this bridge thing. It's an image I always have. It's like, oh, okay. So it's not really about the conclusion. Okay, cool. Let's go down into the valley and swim through this thing. It's the experience.
Now here, let me say this. One of the reasons why, we need women. The world would be a very dry, uninteresting kind of place if it was just men, right?
From top to bottom.
What?
I said from top to bottom it will be.
Oh, right. Right. Oh, right. This cat. It would be a very a dry, uninteresting kind of thing. If you think about this one thing, the best music is the most efficient. Getting to the end is the way that you evaluate the music based on the efficiency of getting to the end. So who gets to the end first wins?
Nope.
Or is it all of the stuff, all the twists and turns that happen within the music? All of the tension and resolution, the false endings, the deceptive cadences, all of the stuff that happens that makes the music very interesting. The drama, right?
Oh.
So that's like a lot of that is like the feminine thing. That's why that stuff is so important, you know. So anyhow, I just
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Dr. K, by the way, and I know you probably have some things to say, but there's a nexus here of charisma versus charm, where that African dad is all charisma, no charm at all, right? he's just gonna stand on the strength of his character. And he's just gonna be there, and he's not gonna be charming. He's not gonna say anything. He's not gonna play these nuanced games, or he's not gonna swim through the river. He's not gonna listen to his wife. Okay, it's just gonna be like, here's the check. You know what? But anyways, so Dr. K, what do you have to say about that? Is this and tips for how to improve charm is what you're talking about right now? Where okay, cool, you have to have that stoic responsibility, bearing, all of that kind of stuff. We fix those spark plugs, get your TE correct in terms of the logic of how things work, understand that correctly, and know that it's not about your feelings or utopia, blah blah blah. But then, if you want balance, you have to deal with the charm, so that people like Dua are not out there feeling unheard, unseen, and so on and so forth. And we're acknowledging that.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so shout out. I want to give shout outs to all my haters out there in the chat, calling me a dusty love doctor. But I do want to respond to Dua first. I want to say yes, Dua 100%. Responsibility is both obviously on the mother and the father. That was more of a little dig / joke. But I do want to answer your question, and also, everybody else's X point there is this, like, the same problem that the man is going to have. It's the same problem that Dua is going to have. Dua is someone who's introspective. She's been thinking. She's been trying to get more in touch with her culture, maybe religion, get more intelligent, get the money up. So if she wants to get married, she wants to find someone who is actually on the same level. The issue is, unless you don't actually discover all the points of views that the person is at, you're going to make the wrong decision. The same thing as you, Ike, that you're talking about. You're talking about the man who, it doesn't have to just be a charismatic person that's just unwavering stone, in the heat of the moment, but he's actually able to now add some charm in there. The problem is, you can't add charm to a relationship like that if the woman isn't in the same level or similar level to where you are. What will happen is you add the charm, but it will be misunderstood, mistaken, and what will happen is she will just abuse you. For example, Dr. Tannen there mentioned something about the woman being something that allows the experience to be enriched, right? Now, here's the issue with actually going and discussing with your wife. If your wife is not high level enough, your wife will create that argument. You're not engaging enough, she gets angry. You're engaging too much, she's also angry. So she's not really looking for any resolution. There still has to be some kind of resolution. Yeah, sure, the journey is what she wants, but sometimes she could be stuck in a loop. If your wife is stuck in a loop at all problems and she just wants some conflict and the experience isn't even that interesting, you're not learning, you're not moving anywhere, you're going to be stuck in hell. So you're actually better off being that African dad who just refuses to engage. So really, realistically, you got to figure out, are you in hell? Which kind of hell are you in? Are you in hell level 1, hell number 2, or hell number 3? Each different levels of hell have different solutions.
So hell number 3 is the African dad solution is probably best, where you're like complete disengagement, go straight for charisma, be the stone. The charm is going to get you in trouble. The interaction is going to get you in trouble. Interesting. So you're talking about the fact that, people, I don't like using that phrase similarly yoked because everybody likes to use it in all kinds of wrong ways. Equally yoked, right? It's just problematic.
Whatever that means, man.
it's one of those things in the Bible where it's like, it was kind of almost said in passing. So did like a point to kind of illustrate, but then people put all their freaking fantasies in there, any kind of thing they want to prove.
One of the issues with that is the equally yoked. It seems to imply that the yoking is all stuff on the same in the same medium. The same terms. The same. But obviously that's not the case, right? We're not talking about equally yoked means that you both have equal amount of physical strength. You're both bringing in the same amount of money to the house, right? See, that would be a 50-50, person.
Or even the same amount of, shall we say, understanding. By understanding, I mean someone's got to be the big rat. And the big rat is the one with a little bit more understanding. The big rat is the one who really
Right.
understand. Like, I'm gonna let the fight. I'm sorry.
Well, the thing is it's about, of course, all of this is within the context of there being a clear vertical thing: God over man, man over woman, wife, and wife over children, right? So that's there. So equally yoked within that context, not equally yoked as another option. See, so I don't, I don't need to submit to my man because we're equally yoked. It's not that. It's within that. It's within the context of this vertical order, which of course creates a totally different way of viewing what it is that we're talking about. And we're not talking about even percentages, because often it's the case that you have to offer more than the other person is offering and is capable of offering at a particular time. You're both look, there are two paths there. This is the early church view on this process of salvation. This is a critical component that many folks miss. There are two paths to salvation, two pathways to salvation. One of them is celibacy and the other one is marriage. Okay, celibacy is sufficiently difficult as to produce the character necessary to make it through the fire, as it were, because we will all be refined by fire, right?
No matter what.
No matter what. And then the second one is marriage, which is sufficiently difficult to produce the same sort of tension and possibly more, right? So both of those pathways are hard pathways. They're hard pathways. They're not easy pathways. Right. So you may have to be the stronger one, and you may have to put up with certain things and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about patent disrespect, and I'm not talking about stuff that is obviously way outside of. We're not talking about simping and pedestalizing. That's not what we're talking about.
Both of them are equally difficult. That is interesting there, because I thought about, like,
Not equally.
It might even be more hard. It might be more difficult to the marriage one. Yeah, because you can be chilling there as an incel in the basement and you'd be doing just fine. I don't know why I picture Game Changer, but I'm not coming for you, Game Changer. Picture Game Changer somewhere out here in the Bay with his little laptop.
Free agent lifestyle.
Angrily creating a stream.
She didn't talk to me. I pay for a lunch.
Shout out to Game Changer indeed. Now, we've already gone above the normal time for this show, which was rather interesting, a good one. You guys participated nicely in the chat. Thank you for coming through. And by the way, don't leave without subscribing. Okay, and I hope that some of you already left, the ones whom I mentioned earlier, and the ones who will be listening after the show. Okay, the after stream when you're playing the replay crew. Okay, replay gang, go ahead and subscribe if you have not already. Like, share, notification bell, and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, but let's land the plane here on the topic. Okay, we talk about functional masculinity, and we didn't just come over here and do BS. Okay, now we didn't go too granular and all that kind of stuff where it's too heavy lifting and no one can, whatever. Right? But we laid out the groundwork a little bit where we said, look, there's something about the external world as brought into us by Sparkplug example, right? The logic of doing things, the logic of how things work, the logic of working with mediums, and where mediums have a nature and they're restrictive to you and they're going to give you feedback, and it doesn't, the logic of, or the world of facts don't care about your feelings, right? That world, that's the world where we have to deal with. And in tackling, it is because you have to tackle those things. That's why you have to have that ethos of facts don't care about your feelings. The Sparkplugs doesn't care about your feelings. The lions outside the Maasai village doesn't care about the feelings of the guy who's out there to protect it. There is a logic to lion killing, and it's not about how you feel that day or whether. So
or if it's fair,
the other kind of logic,
that.
the other type of function, which is FE, which is about feelings of people, fairness, smoothing, all that kind of stuff. Typically, is not a man's first priority. Right. Hence, if a man is too much about, we call them simps around here, right? Too much about the fairness and how about all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to call any particular names, but You already immediately start getting the. I'm not gonna call any particular names. Solar Hair.
Yeah.
Solar Hair is here in the chat, but
Uber simp.
All right, Kaizo.
from Ghana
I
to
don't know if you
Canada. Was
see-
that what?
no, hold up now. I don't know if you see this video that's playing behind me from
it's
a certain show
white
with
it
a
out.
young lady.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
Oh,
Careful when you're hurling. this
I'll be careful. I already have too many hairs right now on the chat, so I don't want to get exposed.
Oh yeah, that's something that. Oh, you know what?
Heavy
From
stuff.
Kaizo's channel. Okay, there's some footage out there of Dr. K that you might guys will find very interesting. If he messes up too much, we're gonna show you something rather cringe when he was in a very, very unsophisticated manner simping all over. Anyways, that's
hard simping.
You see, he's a very uncouth character. But the point being that there's a certain type of for me, and the reason why I asked also about rationality is because it's an outgrowth of dealing with the external world where logic is more important. And whenever you hear men, okay, and this is a particular kind of issue of mine, whenever men are not able to deal with just facts, brutal facts, where if I hear a man say, "Oh, but you can't say that," that's a man that's written off already. Like, you're written off. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. If you tell me, "Oh, but
can't
you
even
can't
say
that.
something.
Oh, you can't say that. Are you saying your mother is ugly? Yes. If it is in fact my judgment that the mother is ugly, that's what I just said. Okay. If what I said implies that my mother is ugly too, then yes, that's the implication. Because this is why it's so. It's about the facts. Don't care about your feelings. Is this the guy you're gonna go on a hunt with, or you want to be in the foxhole with you shooting people, talking about you can't say that? Like, dude. Okay. The bullets, the lion, the spark plugs don't care about this stupid. Oh, you can't say that. You can't do that crap. Okay, it is what it is. It may be right or wrong, but it is a fact on the table, and you should be able to contend with facts without saying, "Oh, blah blah blah." So, is that a fair enough summary, Dr. K? And then we'll have the last words from Dr. Thunder. Fair enough summary vis-a-vis the landscape that men are going to be operating in. It's outside in that Maasai village, protecting against the lions, fixing spark plugs, doing things that have to do with the external world. And by the way, the external world gives you feedback. Okay, that's why. It's not about a whole bunch of talking, right? There's a right way and a wrong way. There's a best hunter and a worst hunter, and it just is what it is. It's rather functional. What do you have? What are your final thoughts, Dr. K?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in the Maasai village, the man that protects the village the best, the man that kills the most animals and provides the meat, actually gets a lot of leverages in that. What do you call them?
Peace leaf.
Extra stuff. Yeah, he first of all. Yeah, he gets to marry the most women. He gets to have the biggest meat. He gets all the privileges. So that there is a direct way that the nature or environment responds to you. Exactly, right? So he's at the top of the world, etc. So, however, the men at the bottom, unfortunately, if they get anything at all, they just got to pray to God. So 100% I agree with everything you said. And I think one comment I can make here is that if a man wants to be more masculine, they do need to actually find another older man, I think, especially in the West, to show them an example of what masculinity is. And not this idolatry stuff. Oh, you didn't know. No, none of that. I don't believe in idolatry. Just an example, something that you could learn from. You could actually be following someone online, implementing some of the things. Let's say you follow Dr. Thunder. It's like, okay, this is how I save money every month. Blah, blah, blah. This is just simple stuff like this. I think that's a good way to start exercising, learning about how to be a masculine man, because unfortunately, we are in a gynocentric environment, and it's not in the benefit of this environment to teach you those skills. And if you don't learn them, you will die in the end.
You will not be saved. Dr. Thunder, what are your final thoughts? You got something coming? By the way, Thunder starts every Thursday. Right? That's tomorrow. So what you got coming up tomorrow for us? Are you going to do the spark plug video? Car Thunder?
Yeah, I'll probably do a car thunder in the morning. And I am thinking on that topic. The car thunder stuff tends to be pretty kind of impromptu kind of stuff. It's, I get an idea and then I'm kind of riffing on that. And folks dig that. So I've been trying to do more of those. Thunder's Thoughts is the sort of, that show is being transformed into like a late night talk show kind of format, and eventually we'll have a regular panel as for part of it, part of the show. But it always has a co-host. Usually that co-host has been Dr. Doug, and I think Dr. Doug will be on the show tomorrow night. But I think the topic that we're going to discuss on the show will be, let's see here. It's gonna be on the I'm not super clear on it, but it's going to be something related to passport bros, and also the women that have already been engaging this behavior for a long time. They've been doing that for a long time, a lot longer than the men, and in possible retaliation. Now that this sort of concept, this idea, this lifestyle, this passporting has sort of achieved escape velocity. So there's probably going to be some repercussions. So a topic, something like that. And then next week's show, I'm looking to have, and we're still working this out, but I'm looking to have Edward Anderson as a co-host. And on that show, we're going to talk about abstinence versus pump and dump. So that's coming.
Abstinence versus pump and dump with Edward Anderson. And at some point, you're going to be debating Ramil, I believe.
Pump and dump with this. Pump and dump with this. Pump and dump.
Right.
Okay. So, guys, you know what? Since you're gonna do like that, okay, and since, by the way, I promised you ever more chances to redeem yourself as you continue to appear on this channel, because we don't like people without rhythm, swag, messing up our flow here. What we got going on here, me and Dr. Thunder. So we're gonna have you take us out here with a Kendrick Lamar type beat, as you like to always complain that you don't have, and that's what you need.
And all my haters are here, man.
Your haters are here, and they're waiting for you to deliver them with I'm going to turn off the background beat first, okay, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to do any rhyming, so I don't have to mess up anything for you, okay? It's all you, okay? It's all you and Kendrick Lamar. I'm going to start the beat from the top. All right.
Fair enough. Just make sure it's loud enough for me.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I know. You got all kinds of demands. I know.
Make me sound like a housewife. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Had a great stream over here. The stream is finally on its end. I felt as though my whole hair, all three of them on my toenails, as though there'd be. I got too many haters on the chat, but I feel as though I've been chewing on too much cat. My whole head is about to explode. I'm higher than the bluebird. The sky's too much, man. The sky's all the calling me back to the ancestral lands. About to get it back to the future, but I feel like I can't hit the demands of my wife in the future. She's been already asking me, where are you? I've been seeing on live streams all over the space, simping up on women on Dr. Thunder's channels, but now I'm about to go cold. I want a whole new bag of Chanel. I want to be smelling sweet and fresh, but I feel like I need to exhale, go back into the shower. Oh man.
Okay.
You sound like you're about to laugh half of the time. You like right on the verge of laughing.
It's like you're not taking the thing even seriously. Like it's like what's going on?
Give me the other beat. One more beat.
What the hell is the other beat?
The one that was next to it.
The one that was next to it. Okay, we'll play a next Kendrick Lamar type beat. I'll just push forward on this thing so that we can hear your next objection.
Okay.
We want 1.5 speed.
Just a normal.
This for you.
Talk about the sad
Tick,
times.
tick.
Okay, let's see. Okay, this is nice. Yeah. Inside of my mind is so hollow. I can barely relate, but wanna see tomorrow. Sometimes when I'm thinking, sometimes when I'm dreaming out loud in my own head, I feel as though I'm finally falling inside of this truth. I exhale with my own vision. My breath is still so breathless. I feel as though I'm barely alive, barely sinking through this whole statement. I feel like I got buried 6 feet under. The cement is too high now. I feel as though I'm back on the pavement. Fell over, homeless because I got too drunk. But now my whole mental, no longer sober. Sometimes I feel like I'm just stuck in this hell. I want to exhale some more. I want to smoke some more weed, but my own health keeps telling me that if I keep going on, I might never excel. I might never excel in this life because I've never been based. My whole situation, my whole knowledge is. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, you want me to go ahead?
Yeah.
I wasn't supposed to go, I wasn't supposed to flow, supposed to row, supposed to go. Anyways, back on the ship, back on the skip, but I'm not the skipper. Back on the whip, driving it down, but I'm not a whipper. But call me the stripper on the MTV, telling you take your asses to the pole. Your ass is so cold from sitting on the AC all day. And then I come back and I say, oh, hey, where's my email? Cause I'm the Nigerian prince, all the money. Yes, and he will take all your honeys from the Eritrea. I come through and I'm leading ya, splitting you down.
Yeah.
Let me come back with a different skip, a different hip, a different dip, different chewing tobacco. I'm coming through like my name was the Snacko. It's a new brand of chips, brand of clips, brand of hot, brand new, coming brand used.
So he said, come over to my house. I want to chop some money. Sometimes when I don't understand, like I just say, like I'll bring the honey. My wife is never calling. My wife never come tired. My wife is about to tell me like you're gonna get hit on a tire. On your head, you cannot ever explode again because you just stuck. You don't even understand who your middle name is because you are just a tat. Every time I come back, it's like Kwesi has my wife. I don't even know if my third child born is really my son or yours. Sometimes when I come back, it's like I slept with 500 hoes. I'm not talking about the ones you find in the places. I'm talking about the one you ride. You ride it until you can never really understand why you're tired. I feel as though I'm finally getting a better rapper because I'm Nigerian. All of my real place.
All right, great. I think you're probably good at the spoken word of when you do a character, like character, spoken word. I don't think you're gonna get this rhythm thing. I don't know what your judgment is, Dr. Thunder, but I think perhaps. Okay.
I think part of the issues is probably the latency.
Difference.
Probably occurring.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
like
Exactly.
you're probably not experiencing any latency because the music is coming from your system.
Exactly.
But
See?
I ain't letting you
Exactly.
off the hook.
Dr. Thunder is a professional musician, so let's take his word.
Well, Dr. Thunder knows, and Dr. Thunder is a professional musician, okay? And I'm not on top of my game today, but I'm going to give you one more verse. And Dr. Thunder, obviously, we're not keeping you, right? So,
all right, I'll see you guys later. I'll be listening.
The loser hour. The adults have left the room.
Okay.
And, only the losers are left.
Let me go first.
We want to go first? Okay, go ahead.
You go first. Go.
Shit. Yo, I'ma go first. I'ma go in the hearse. I'ma go worst. I'ma go with the burst. I'ma go with a hearse. Like my name was Hershey. I got the burpee and 7 sit-ups, 7 stick-ups that I did back in NYC. NYB, my favorite city in the summertime. Summer grind, summer rhyme. Yes, I'm eating on the pork rinds. Crunchy, crunchy, chew them up. Coming through like I shoot them up. And then I take the money, put it back in the back pocket. Yes, I packed it and I locked it and I cocked it. I pointed at your dome. Boom. I pointed with the chrome, then I threw it away. Yes, I threw it away. I blew it away. Like the bluebird flew it away. Go ahead.
The bluebird flew away. I felt so fluid. I feel like I'm finally free today. Sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror, all I can really but think about is am I finally clearer? My whole words, my whole vision is finally moving through the space-time continuum, but I guess I must be feeling cruising. I'm so cruel, man. I'm so cruel, but I feel as though my whole crew came through right here now. Finally thinking about the space-time, finally thinking about the emotions, and emotions are coming straight line. I feel as though I'm finally away from this place, from top to bottom. That's how I got here. Now they call me queer every single time they see me over here, rapping here, feeling as though my whole hair fell off like Ike's bald head. I feel as though I'm finally going over here, like my whole situation just got changed. It became temporary like a stationary phase. A phase, a momentary expression of self until I can no longer see myself in this whole vision. I feel like one division create a whole space-time and enslave the whole town.
You couldn't see your vision, you couldn't see your mission. Now switch hitting in the hood. You couldn't see your wisdom, you couldn't see your mission. And now we chilling. What's good, and what's bad, what's sad. Cause I'm coming back on the track, I'm coming back on your back. Like, yeah, I didn't say it before, I said it with many men. I ran from here to Aspen. You can ask them because I'm down for the action. I got the traction, like slowing down the steep, skiing down the slopes. Skiing down the slopes, not sloping down the skis. Yes, I got the E's and I got the D's. I mean these nuts and these cuts that I cut fresh from the microwave. Micro tame and micro blame. That's the micro aggression I'll be giving y'all. I'll be spitting y'all. I'll be splitting y'all in half. Divide and conquer. I'm the one. Yes, call me the Sanka. Yes, that's a South African word, but not Mr. Musanda. He doesn't know what's going on. The white man got his woman. Anyways.
R.I.P. to those ears for having to listen to you and me.
All right, well, that's it. That's perfect. And I think, okay, not bad. I like the Nigerian accent character with the spoken word type stuff. I also like what you did here at the end. You're getting better. We are getting something out of you at the end of the day after all. So we're going to remove. What was that? It's still playing even though I removed it. Oh, it's not playing anymore. It's just playing on my...
on your screen, huh?
It's playing on my screen. Okay. All right, cool.
In the end, the haters changed their mind. They said it wasn't that bad.
Yeah,
that was
you see? Yeah, you gotta all that East African Horner dust you guys do over there is just rubbing off on you. No shade. I'm just saying every once in a while you gotta come over here to the west side. Well, we got groove, we got flow, we got swag. Okay.
Get the real flow. Okay, shout out, man. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Dr. Thunder and Ike, for having me over here on this side. Shalom, mother, loving, Wam.
All right, Shalom, indeed, we are out.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what's a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil's lurking, with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.